It's time for the Cover Price Top 10. This time we're going back 2 years. All right, guys, it's time. The Cover Price Top 10. We're going back 2 years. This is the first video post New York Comic Con second video I'm getting recorded. Anyway, long story short, New York Comic Con came and went. Here we are. I want to remind everybody where to follow me, all the social media stuff, VERYGARY_comics, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and whatnot. If you guys are watching this the day it comes out, which is Friday, October 20th, get on Whatnot, because Saturday night, tomorrow, 8 o'clock-ish, maybe Eastern, we're going live from the Butch's basement. We're going to be moving the last of the New York Comic Con stuff we have. Tons of giveaways, original art. And if you were at New York Comic Con, you saw the big banners we had. We're going to auction those off too. Todd McFarlane style signatures and remarks on the big giant banners of the Darkwing, Negaduck, TMNT 1, and the Miles Morales art book. That's on Whatnot, guys. Again, VERYGARY_comics. If you're not on Whatnot and you want to be, in the description down below, you can get a $10 off discount code along with a discount code for Cover Price and Mutant Beaver Comics. Check those out. And don't forget to check out Cover Price's YouTube channel and coverprice.com. They have a great website. So much information over there. So let's get into it. This list comes to us from our friends over at Cover Price. We're going to go over the top 10 movers and shakers list from 2 years ago. The top 10 from 2 years ago. How did those books do then compared to how are they now? Did they go up? Were they a boost? Did they go down? Were they a bust? And let's get into this and start off at number 10. This is the Eternals #1. 2 years ago, this book was primed to take off with the Eternals film less than a month out. It hit a high of $3,800 for a CGC 9.8 copy in early 2021, but was still trending around $2,500 at the time of this top 10. Near mint copies were routinely going for $250 and up. Then the film hit, and it was a complete bust. Fans and critics alike panned it for the disjointed nature of the movie and the extreme amount of world building needed to make it work. It just didn't scratch the itch for fans, and that reflected in the journey this book has taken. Near mint raw copies are currently trending for around $50, while 9.8 copies sit around $390. It's a major bust, but it delivered an invaluable lesson to the community. It's seen as the book that shifted sentiment toward a more conservative angle, with the fans recognizing the power and pain of content-driven prices. While some books retain higher value than before content announcements, this was not the case. These prices fell back to 2017 values before fans even considered speculating on the team. Still, we don't know when we'll see members of the Eternals again. The current values are exceptionally low and is an excellent time to buy into if you feel that redemption lies ahead for them. This series provides so much content to draw from. It's bound to exert its influence once again, albeit unlikely at the heights it reached prior. We're going to get into 9, but I do want to say there was a teaser in Loki with one of the Eternals. Let's get to number 9. This is Brightest Day #4. How this hobby shifted in 2 years is astounding. This book was on fire 2 years ago as speculation ran rampant that Jackson Hyde would appear in the Aqualad TV series on HBO Max, now Max, as Aqualad. In addition, rumors were swirling that he would appear in Aquaman 2. That led this book to see high sales of $30 for a near mint raw copy before quieting down. Then confirmation hit that we would get an Aqualad series featuring Jackson. In April 2022, it trended around $200 for CGC 9.8 and $35 for a raw near mint copy. Currently, it's averaging close to $50 for a CGC 9.8, $10 for a near mint raw copy, primarily due to all that speculation falling through. Aquaman 2 has hardly received any marketing from Warner Brothers and is quietly set to debut later this year. The Aqualad series hasn't officially been canceled, but has received no news since April of 2022. It's quietly been relegated to the bust category since, but with copies trending so cheap, now might be the time to pick one up. If the new DCU wanted to shift away from Momoa's Aquaman, Jackson Hyde is the way to go. Guys, 9.8 copies for $50. It would be the same price to go grab a near mint copy and submit it yourself and keep your fingers crossed you get a 9.8. Under $100 for a first appearance in a 9.8 always seems like a good deal to me. Let's get to number 8. This is Moon Knight #1, the John Tyler Christopher New York Comic Con negative variant. That's a mouthful. Convention started coming out of hibernation 2 years ago, and this book was a New York Comic Con darling. JTC delivered a batch of negative space variants, and they all did quite well. Fans were also excited for the debut of Hunter's Moon, a Moon Knight villain, causing this book to hit highs of $500 for a CGC 9.8. $140 for a near mint raw copy. 2 years later, despite JTC continuing to deliver incredible negative space variants, we now know that this book could not sustain that momentum, as Hunter's Moon is no longer the shiny new character on the block. Currently, it's trending for around $20 for a near mint raw copy, $95 for a CGC 9.8. It's a bust, and it likely won't see those highs ever again. Still, this is a great variant for fans of JTC or Hunter's Moon to add to the PC that is now less harsh on the wallet. Love the negative variants, love them, and now there's still only really a handful of them, and they're all very affordable, so if you're missing one or two of them, now's the time to grab them. Let's get to number 7. Deadpool Black, White, and Blood #3, the Stan Sakai 1 in 25. This book is a prime example of the gravitas the creator of Usagi Yojimbo brings. When it dropped, it hit a high sale of $130 for a CGC 9.8 and trended at a solid $60 shortly after. Near mint raw copies were fetching $65 all day. However, 2 years later, it's now trending at $15 for a near mint raw copy with no CGC 9.8 sales since last year when it hit $58. There was a flurry of raw sales when it was a new book on the block and very few graded copies. It appears fans acquired this book and opted to keep it raw, with only 7 in the CGC 9.8 on the census. It's a bust, but still has a draw to it. A dedicated subset of collectors buy all Stan Sakai covers, regardless of IP. If you're one of them, now's the time to keep your eyes peeled for a fairly priced copy. Not a lot on the census. Stan Sakai, creator of Usagi Yojimbo. The Usagi fan base is hardcore. They love Stan Sakai. They love the rabbit. They grab the books. That's what caused this. And now it seems to me that everybody who wanted it has it. Prices has dropped. Let's get to number 6. This is Moon Knight #3. 2 years ago, we got the first full appearance of Hunter's Moon, who had a cameo in issue #1. The community was thrilled with the character, the storyline, and the IP at the time, propelling it to a high sale of $190 for CGC 9.8 and near mint raw copies for north of $10. 2 years later, while Hunter's Moon is still relevant, he never had the entire community's attention like some other characters. It's difficult for modern characters to succeed in the current market. This book saw the same fate, now seeing CGC 9.8 sales for a bust of around $30. Near mint raw copies could be considered break even, as they routinely secure $10. Consistently is a big deal for modern books, and you're in the market for the first full appearance of Hunter's Moon. It's not likely to drop any further. Let's get to number 5, because I've already talked about it. First appearance, under $100. This one's under $50 for 9.8. I don't know. Seems like a good buy. Let's get to number 5. Venom Lethal Protector #1. 2 years ago, this book was trending thanks to the second Venom film and referring to himself as a lethal protector. It saw high sales of $260 for a CGC 9.8 before calming down and trending towards $180. Raw copies also saw a ton of heat, with near mint copies going for around $35. This book hasn't disappeared 2 years later and is arguably just as popular. It's still popping up on the top 10 lists and hitting all-time new highs, just like the CGC 9.9 copy sold this year for $3,600. While it's trading hands routinely, numbers are down on this book, with near mint raw copies trending around 25, while CGC 9.8 copies have dropped to 120. It could be considered a bust, but if looking at the raw data, kind of what we do here, but ultimately it's just doing fine 2 years later. With no underlying project on the horizon propping this book up outside of Venom #3, it's still standing tall and gaining ground year after year. It's a cheap modern key that fans of Venom love to acquire. Venom is here to stay, and so is this book. This is the quintessential 90s foil #1. It's a great cover. There are 9.8s all over the place. There are signed copies all over the place. There are sketched copies all over the place. It's a great book for any Venom fan. If you're a Venom fan, you have to own this book. There's millions of copies out there. Let's get to number 5. Nope, 4. 4. Let's get to number 4. Sorry. Let's get to number 4. This is Fantastic Four, number 94. That's a lot of 4s. Like Agatha Harkness on her broom, this book was flying high just 2 years ago. Fresh off an outstanding performance in WandaVision, Agatha Harkness was the talk of the town. In addition, it was announced that she would also receive a solo Disney Plus series. That caused her keys to skyrocket, hitting high sales of $1,500 for CGC 9.4 and trending at around the same price in the same grade and above near mint raw copies. Saw action. Well, that was a little bit of a run on there as well, topping out at $480. This book would continue to rise until its peak of $11,400 for a CGC 9.8 on Heritage in April of 2022. 2 years later, it's been relatively quiet regarding any updates for the Agatha show outside of casting of Aubrey Plaza and a few others. This lack of news has caused this book to bust, with very fine raw copies trending around $55 compared to $200 2 years ago, and CGC graded books not changing hands often. The most comparable sale is a CGC 8.5 that recently sold for $192, while 2 years ago it averaged around $500. That can happen when projects are announced with little to no follow-up behind them. However, Agatha's Coven of Chaos is still in the works, and with an announcement, it will hit in 2024, hitting the internet just a few days ago. Now would be the prime time to pick up a copy for the right price before the trailer can be released. Expect to see a spike once the fandom is gently reminded of the first appearance of Agatha Harkness. I'm actually really excited about this Disney Plus series. I loved WandaVision. I loved Agatha. I thought it was just great all around. And I'm a sucker for like the magic stuff. I like the Doctor Strange stuff. I like the Agatha. I like the Wanda stuff. So I'm really looking forward to this series. Let's get to number 3. Marvel Holiday Special #1. This book was a deep cut that saw quite a bit of attention 2 years ago. That was thanks to James Gunn returning to the MCU with a Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special in tow. At the time, he teased the introduction of one of the greatest MCU characters of all time. Fans went wild theorizing and speculating on what character this could be, ultimately landing on the possibility it could be Santa, introduced as an Omega level mutant in this book. That led near mint raw copies to trend at $10, while graded copies were almost non-existent. 2 years later, we've learned that Santa was not the character Gunn was talking about, it was Cosmo. Cosmo would become much more fleshed out in the holiday special and subsequent Guardians 3 film. Despite not featuring Santa, this book is a boost for raw grades, as near mint raw copies are currently trending for $20, while there are still hardly any graded sales occurring, with the last being in a CGC 7.5 in December of 2022 for $45. Now, this book is one of those that appeals to a certain collector, but not the general masses. It's doubtful it will ever be a major key, but it's still cool nonetheless. Santa as an Omega mutant is brilliant. Collect what you love, and if this book is it, grab it if you see it. We're going to get to number 2. Before we do, I want to remind everybody all the discount codes down below. Check out covrprice.com. There is a discount code for covrprice.com as well. Let's get to number 2. This is Prophet #1. 2 years ago, Jake Gyllenhaal was on a warpath. It was announced that he would be at the helm of an Oblivion song and Prophet movie. That caused both books to skyrocket, but this one especially. CGC 9.8 copies nearly doubled, trending at $75 to $80, while near mint raw copies saw moderate growth, rising from $2 all day to trend for around $8. It's been 2 years and this project hasn't received much attention outside of screenwriter change, which is never the best sign. However, graded copies have weathered the storm, with CGC 9.8 books trending at $88. Raw copies haven't done as well, falling back to around $3. It's a bust for raw copies and a boost for graded, as this book can be found cheap in the wild, but high-grade slabbed copies are more difficult to come by. It might be worth picking up a raw copy and submitting it yourself due to the ease of access and price point. You have time, however, as superhero media has slowed down. Projects in development have pumped the brakes, allowing the community more time to breathe in between projects. Profit appears to be following the trend, most likely not seeing a rise anytime soon, unless we get a trailer or an update regarding the project. We're going to get down to number one. I forgot to remind you, check out covrprice.com. Check out their YouTube. They do put out some content. And with that, let's get to number one. This is Youngblood number 2, The Pink Logo. This book fell right in line with our previous book 2 years ago. That's because fans were pumped at the news that Jake Gyllenhaal was attached to a profit project, sending this first appearance in this book and his first solo title skyrocketing. With Rob Liefeld fueling rumors on Twitter, this book saw a high sale of $400 for a CGC 9.8 copy, while near mint raw copies trending around $22. 2 years later, the community has received no word outside of a new screenwriter. This book is in a slump. Near mint raw copies are now trending at a bust for about $5, while CGC 9.8 copies have been hit the hardest, currently trending at $60. The green logo version sells for more than $130. Once again, we see lesser known IPs get a huge boost on the back of the film TV series news before petering out with a little follow-up. Now, the indie market is ripe for the adaptation, and this book is no different. If this project gets going again, this book could reach the heights it achieved prior. But without a project pushing it along the way, it will most likely remain where it currently sits. While it is a bust, it still has a ton of potential. It's not a bad book here to keep an eye on, guys. That's our top 10, but we're going to break things down even more for you right now. This list is a prime example of patience in the comic market 2 years later. This ebb and flow, things ebb and flow, especially books that are at the epicenter of unfounded rumors, or at the very least, barely fleshed out rumors. This list is full of them and subsequently full of busts to boot. But there are some diamonds in the rough, and certainly some of the books to keep an eye on. We're in a completely different environment than we were 2 years ago, and collectors having to look deeper than surface level to find books with the ability to grow while not killing the wallet. Still, none of these books are relegated to the phantom zone, and nearly every book having something going for it. These will be interesting to check in on in the future to see if the projects behind them petered out for good, or if this was the last stop before they rocketed into the stratosphere. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget Covrprice's movers and shakers list, and come back next time because we're going back 3 years to 2020. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep it comics.